All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday morning Dharma talk. This morning, March 1st, I have the pleasure of introducing Ryushin Jan Freier. Ryushin is a longtime practitioner who started practice at MZMC in 1985. He received jukai there in 1988 and worked as tenzo and other mostly kitchen-related jobs until 1994. He attended Clouds-in-Water Zen Center for a couple of years, starting in 2002, and in 2016 he became a member of Hokyoji practice community. He volunteers regularly at Open Arms and Second Harvest Heartland to feed those in need. Ryushin, thank you so much for your talk this morning. Please take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. Am I loud enough? Okay. So it's almost impossible to put together a talk these days without some tragic event coming in. So I will acknowledge that we're again at war in the Mideast, but then I'll put that aside. So I wrote most of this down a few days ago, and it's longer than normal. I warn you ahead of time. Most of it is based on, I've been attending awareness in action workshops, whatever, from Upaya. These are based basically on my reflections on Rebecca Solnit and her talk on her book, Paradise Built from Hell, and a recent one from Henry Shukman, Shukman, on his recent book, Original Love. So if you want better versions of this talk that don't have my quirky opinions and stories, I would go there. So the topic is why be good? Why be good? How and why are we should we be good? Or why are we good? So good immediately raises the question of good and bad and divisions, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So I will begin the story of my moral education with an event when I was about 5 years old at the Hilltop Market, which was on the edge of a large community of post-war houses. I was shopping there with my mom and dad, and I saw that there was a pack of blackjack gum right by the counter, and I just took it. And I didn't have a nickel to pay for it. I just took it. So when I got home, my mom noticed that I was chewing gum. And she, of course, asked, "Where'd you get that?" And I told her. And next thing I know, we're back at Hilltop Market, and I'm paying the clerk a nickel for the gum. So blackjack gum, in case you don't know, it was introduced in 1884. This is a real historical. It was the first flavored gum in the US, and it was also the first sold in stick form. I don't even know if you can find it anymore, but it's licorice flavored. It's kind of unusual. So that was the beginning of my moral education, and I was embarrassing, but more than that, I didn't want to be disappointing my parents. So this is kind of a layering of I didn't have any idea that stealing was not necessarily good, but I didn't want to be disappointing. I didn't have a doctrine about stealing. I just didn't want to be, disappointing my parents. So about the same age, maybe a little older, I was hanging around with kids from the neighborhood. My best friend lived across kitty corner from me, but there was another kid on the other side of the street near the woods, 2 doors down. His name, and I get, some people think I'm making this name up, but his name was Bobo Rouser. Bobo Rouser. And Bobo was a little rougher than the rest of us. He tried to set the woods on fire. He was a vicious hide and seek player. He was yelling at his mom all the time. One time, Bobo taught us how to swear. And I came home swearing, and my mom took offense at that, and that was the end of that, and that was the end of my relationship with Bobo Rouser. I don't know what would have happened to him, but I don't think it was good. So these are kind of a layering of yeah, you don't do that, you don't do that. Why? Just because we don't do that. So the distinction came up early that Bobo was not one to be, hang around with. And the other thing that was happening at that time was my brothers and I were always being exposed to Westerns. The bad guys were always plotting to take whatever resources the good guys had. So land, money, gold. And it seems like the main bad guy never had any trouble recruiting a bunch of henchmen to support his goals, whereas the hero of our stories were always kind of off on their own. This is kind of disturbing when you think about it. It's not a good, it's a myth, it's a storytelling, it's like a hero story, but it's not very accurate. The lesson seemed to be that you had to have extreme self-reliance, competence, and skill. And a lot of times, the only way to solve a problem was to kill somebody. It's like, oh, this is what you want to be teaching kids. And it was true. If the good guy just beat somebody up, it just humiliated them and made them even more angry and more evil. So my generation grew up on these values of extreme self-reliance, competence and skill, independence. Um, I don't think it served us very well. And it turns out this is not what really happens. So Rebecca Solnit has this book, Paradise Built from Hell. She has many instances where she explores these things. So this is a summary. So this is describing the book, a startling investigation of what people do in disasters and why it matters. Why is it that in the aftermath of a disaster, whether man-made or natural, people suddenly become altruistic, resourceful, and brave? What makes the newfound communities and purpose many find in the ruins and crises after disaster so joyous? And what does this reveal about ordinary, unmet social desires and possibilities? In A Paradise Built in Hell, award-winning author Rebecca Solnit explores these phenomena, looking at major calamities from the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco through the 1917 explosion that tore up Halifax, Nova Scotia, the 1985 Mexico City earthquake, 9/11, and Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. She examines how disaster throws people into temporary utopia of changed states of mind and social possibilities, as well as looking at the cost of the widespread myths and rare real causes of social deterioration during crisis. This is a timely and important book. So I heard her talk about Hurricane Katrina, and basically from the outside, from media and from government sources, it was a lawless, dangerous place. From inside New Orleans, there rose up a Cajun Navy. Anybody with a boat was going around rescuing people. Yes, stores were being looted, but they were being looted of diapers and baby formula and food that these services were no longer being provided. This was necessary. So this is like, okay, there's a deeper moral level here of stealing. We can steal if we're providing food for people, diapers and baby formula. And from the outside, from the media, it was portrayed completely inverse, upside down. from inside, people were being very, very nice to each other, being very generous and being brave and putting themselves out there. So what happens during these things? It's interesting because it just happened in Minneapolis. Why do communities form like this in the face of disaster or occupation? Something calls to people, something calls deeper. It's not a layering of some kind of ethical guidelines and moral values on top of people. Something calls from deep inside. And over, I heard it people interviewed, protesters or observers say, I had to come out. I couldn't just sit back and watch. I had to come out. Something comes up, something calls. And this is at some risk of physical harm, even death. This is like Alex Preddy helping a woman up, and next thing you know, he's dead. It's like this is crazy, but this is what people are called to do. So why? Why is that? Why are people called under these circumstances? So the Atlantic had an insightful article that we can all find online called Minnesota Proved MAGA Wrong. The administration thought that Minnesota would turn on their immigrants. Yeah, just take them, we don't want them. Or react violently enough to make good TV and provide justification to send in more troops. But none of that happened. Minnesota was ridiculously peaceful. The provocateurs in almost every case were the ICE agents. And I saw various interviews with people and people following along, riding along with people who were doing following. And it's like they were giddy. They were, they were, they were joyful in the danger, putting themselves out there. So the administration had a very inverted view of what was going on. Minnesota, Minneapolis really came through. And so this brings this talk around to practice. Whether we know it or not, Zen practice cultivates empathy. We don't even know it's happening. We're diving down to the core of human nature. So Roshi Joan Halifax defines empathy and compassion differently, slightly differently. Empathy is a feeling into another, but compassion is empathy accompanied by the aspiration to take action. This is all, of course, to our capacity, but it's like this is real. As Rebecca Solnit has pointed out in Disaster After Disaster. So these terms that Jesus came across with love your neighbor as yourself, that's not an imposition. That's not a layering of something. That's something that's coming from the core when it comes from the core. Treat others as you would treat them and be treated. That's something that just happens. This is just empathy at work. This all goes further than precepts, goes further than 10 Commandments. And the precepts and the 10 Commandments, it's nice to have a society based on good ethical guidelines. And people internalize those and they can move forward into a trustworthy, reliable situation. But human nature is actually going deeper than that. The source of these things is deeper than that. And I know once people have rules, I know a lot of people who just want to push and see how far they can go. I know people, addiction especially, it's like, how much can I get away with and still hold my life together? How much can I get away with? So this is kind of a twisting of rules, not getting in touch with the core of the human nature, just working on the surface. So what happens in disaster, what happens with the sickness of a loved one, what happens with occupation is a lot of clutter falls away. Priorities are rearranged. Hierarchies are changed. It's not so important to have, I don't know. It's not so important to have those wonderful cookies from Whole Foods anymore. It's just enough to have, some bread and get by and do more important things. So this is a quote from Roshi Joan Halifax. So we can show up in an unmediated way in the present moment and respond in a live manner to mitigate suffering. So we can show up in an unmediated way in the present moment and respond in a live manner to mitigate that suffering. So what happens over and over again is we have this personality that's evolved. We've constructed it's a lot of strategies, a lot of patterns that are very, very useful, but it's a lot of layering on top of what's actually happening. And a lot of practice is about letting go, decluttering. So can we cultivate this kind of decluttering without going through disasters, without going through occupation, without getting out on the street and facing tear gas and pepper balls and rubber bullets? So loving kindness gives this a chance, it's a strategy, it's a method. So it's a guided meditation. I don't especially like guided meditations. I don't like people talking while I'm meditating, but it works for a lot of people. And it does acknowledge the start by recognizing the deep connection we have with someone or something, even a pet. To bring joy to a pet, there's a connection there. So it's like you recognize this, and the way loving kindness meditation works is you start with somebody that you're really close to and really have a trusting, reliable, loving relationship, and you move further and further out as you go. Eventually, you work outward and you notice resistance. And talking to a lot of friends are having kind of violent imagery towards certain people in power these days. And that's, as long as you don't act on it, it's going to happen. It's going to come up. So we're acknowledging and accepting the resistance. It's not a fault. It's not a failure. It's true. So one of the cores of this is an old Sam and Dave song for empathy. And when something is wrong with my baby, something is wrong with me. This is empathy. This is the direct connection. And a good told her murderer, bro, I don't hate you. Bro, I don't hate you. That's pretty far along in loving kindness, just to go to not hate somebody and it seemed to actually aggravate him. That's a very twisted world. So there's a great talk that you can find online by this Henry Shukman, Shukman. It's a Wednesday night Upaya talk on his book, Original Love. A more sensible person than me would give a whole talk based on that book. or a whole talk based on the Rebecca Solnit book. But I'm putting this all together because I'm a little, I like summaries. I like talking points, and then you fill in the gaps. Okay. Mr. Schuckman, in his exploration of meditation, has come across 4 instances of the use of the word awakening. I found this breakdown analysis very useful. Here's Upaya's summary of his talk. In this Wednesday night Dharma talk, poet, author, and meditation teacher Henry Schuckman explores the topic of his latest book, Original Love, by walking through 4 progressively deeper meanings of awakening. He is very careful not to say progressively deeper. And in Zen, we don't like to think about things being progressively deeper. We like to think of things, everything, all the time. This is all contemporaneous as far as we're concerned. I don't know why Apaya said 4 progressively deeper meanings, but that's the way we tend to want to think about it. Through a light, simple, and warm narrative, Henry sets forth 4 ways we can awaken: returning to presence, waking from oppressive self-narratives, entering into flow or samadhi, and most radically, the dissolution of the separate self. The separate self, he suggests, is a kind of intruder, a puppet that arose and claimed authority that it didn't really have. What emerges when that illusion dissolves, you discover you belong utterly, and you see that this very moment is a pure gift. It feels like love. So I'm going to walk through my own quirky view of these 4. So he came across this first one with an MBSR class, mindfulness class, but I think it's much better to talk about it as present moment awareness. This present moment awareness, this is our entry point, and this is our ongoing, continuous, never-ending practice. It's at the beginning, it's in the middle, it's at the end. We may not look at these levels, but it's more than everything all the time. We train to slow down, calm down, and accept. And we find that our own thinking is relentless. Where does all this come from? But there are gaps of quiet, and we can learn and pay attention to those gaps. We can place greater value on the quiet than our repetitious, obsessive self-narrative. So this is awakening in a realization that this mind is really cluttered. This mind is kind of a mess. This mind is bringing up things from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, memories. This mind is bringing up things that have to be done this week. It's like, why? I know I need to do these things, but you don't need to tell me so often. Please, please, let's just calm down here. And it does calm down over a period of days. If you sit, there's less input, there's less output. And the mind begins to relax. There's a lot of relaxing involved in here. If they're striving, this is what you learned from present moment awareness. If they're striving, it just gets in the way. But striving is something we have to work at, letting it go. So this is the second kind of awakening or realization, is what Tara Brach calls, and that Henry Schuckman quotes, as the tyranny of oppressive self-narrative. Because we are hard on ourselves, we have to learn to be kind to ourselves. And I have seen this actually happen to people, that they realize how hard they are on themselves. And it's even a line from the grass hut, letting go of hundreds of years of oppressive thinking. Let go. And it's like, it's possible. I've seen it happen. It's we've internalized, from the very beginning, from that episode at Hilltop Market, I've internalized an awful lot. I've internalized all these little patterns and strategies. I've created a personality, but there's an identity, and it's like this identity turns out to be pretty darn restrictive and pretty harsh occasionally. We're not very kind. So looking closely, accepting our hurt, our fears, how we've restricted ourselves, we begin to soften. And we're not going to soften until we actually look at those things and how hard they are on us. If we continue to distract ourselves and we don't slow down and we don't calm down, Henry Schuckman says we basically have to slow down to know what we're really feeling. And when we slow down and feel what we're really feeling, it's kind of a revelation that we've shut ourselves off from our own feelings for decades, in my case. So this is the second awakening, the second revelation, the second realization that we're living in our own created tyranny of being hard on ourselves, saying, well, you're not really meditating very well. You're not doing everything you should be doing. All these should be doing, should. It's like 10 commandments. Everything is should. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. It's like, it's just going to happen. Now I'm going to say something a bit controversial. These two first realizations, scenarios, I think with some people in some schools, some practitioners, it's easy to get stuck there. It's easy to get stuck there because there's a certain fear of going any further. It's like, well, this is kind of loosening up. What's going to be there if I loosen up anymore? What's going to happen if I loosen up? And there's these strategies, this identity I've created is like, it's kind of loosening, softening. It's like, what's going to happen if I go any further? And it's also, we're endlessly fascinating. We can just go on and on with ourselves for a very long time. I have a friend who's been in therapy 40 years. It's like, are there any new stories in those 40 years? I don't know. So we move on. I think this is my opinion. We move on in two ways. One is by exhaustion. We just get exhausted with who we are and how we've restricted ourselves. We're just tired of it. We pray for this decluttering. We pray for some liberation. We pray for some freedom, some openness. It may be scary to walk into situations that you're not comfortable in, but it's very liberating at the same time. It's kind of people are giddy. People are joyful. It's rediscovering that. And the other way that we move on is by some disaster or catastrophe that collapses our sense of who we are from outside sources. And this is just as this, I would say, this is what happened to me with the sickness and the death of my wife. My sense of self really fell apart because I was so mutually dependent on her. And I had to create a new version. And this collapsing due to the disaster, this is what I think Rebecca Solnit is talking about. Something calls, something stretches the identity, something may not be pleasant, but then again, it's freedom, it's liberation, it's giddy. So this brings us to awakening, we'll call it number 3, realization. These are flow states. These are wholehearted engagement. When the identity kind of effortlessly falls away, there's a sudden silence, peace, and ease. Why or how, nobody quite knows, but I think it has to do with relaxing a great deal and relaxing who you think you are. I'm going to suggest that basically it's getting out of the way. The restrictions of identity are eased. But it's not like one can exert reliable control over one's nervous system. You can kind of set up conditions. You can kind of set up things to go that way. But as soon as you do, some kind of grasping comes in there, and that gets in the way. It's Dogen describes it in one little poem as effort without desire. So there is an effort of going back and paying attention, but without any desire, free from desire, just paying attention to pay attention. And paying attention to pay attention is, I don't know, it has its own kind of endless fascination because you can't grasp it. It's like paying attention to paying attention. It's there. And all that karma, all that personality, all those strategies, all those patterns, they don't go away, but their hold is diminished. It diminished enough for the sense of ease and peace and quiet to rise up. They're seen more for what they are. This is a historical kind of set of circumstances. It's like your set of circumstances are very different from mine, but we all have these sets of circumstances, and we can kind of loosen them somewhat. But again, this is a sticky point. If you have a nice peaceful experience like this, you really want to get back there. And as soon as you want to get back there, you created striving, you've created grasping. But it's natural. This is human beings. Which leads us eventually to awakening number 4, realization. This is what is commonly referred to as enlightenment. There's no division inside or outside. There's no division self and other. This is the core of why we are called to be good. Because how can we harm someone else when that someone else is so closely tied to who we are? There's no division between the two. I know when I was growing up, I was very selfish and I hurt people and I didn't even know I was hurting people. It took a while to realize I was hurting people. And then when I realized I was hurting people, I would tend to want to stop. But sometimes I would still hurt people. And then what would happen was the distance between me realizing I had hurt someone and hurting them became less and less. So when I was like a teenager, the distance was great. I had no idea I was treating my girlfriend so cruelly. And then as time went on and I got into a loving relationship, it's like instantaneous. Oh, I don't have to do that because I don't want to do that. This is this is why enlightenment is not so far away from us. It's not as far away as we think. So I will read Henry Schuckman's description of, of this fourth realization. It's a little bit earth-shaking to discover this because it means that all the assumptions, basically all the assumptions I made about life, are predicated on me being me. Everything's based on this identity. The separate thing I thought I was. And once again, we don't actually have to lose that, but we see it in a very different light from this perspective of awakening. We discover that we are both precisely who we seem to be with this name we've got and so on, and at the same time, part of a kind of inseparableness, a great inseparableness. I think there's one Dharma teacher that talks about belonging. This is the great belonging. So I think that's my talk. A little overwhelming, perhaps. I don't know. I would attempt to answer questions or comments or welcome comments.
So I have something to say. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked your talk, Jan. And one thing that came to mind, just briefly to mention, when you talked about the second um, awakening, my wife went to counseling years ago, and the counselor said she had a should-be bird sitting on her shoulder. Should be doing this, should be doing that. And part of the counseling was to figure out who put that should-be bird on her shoulder. Pretty obvious her mother had a great deal to do with it, but I think we could also say, well, it comes from somewhere else sometimes too, because um, everybody has one of those. But anyways, I've always found that funny because she'll still bring it up sometimes. You know, she'll be on some sort of, I should be doing this, and then she'll remember there's this bird on her shoulder.
Yeah, this is what civilization is based on in a way, because we can't count on everybody getting in touch with their deep human nature, but we can count on people getting in touch with it because the two are kind of related, but there's some awkwardness there. My wife in her last 3 weeks had this experience. She came out of a guided meditation saying, years of oppressive thinking. And she was really hard on herself. She the pressure she put on herself was in some ways it was endearing, but it was some ways it was very hard on her. But it's like I'd never heard her say those words before. Years of oppressive thinking. Where'd that come from? It's like it was a realization. And Ryu.
Hi, it's good to see you. And thank you for this. The years of oppressive thinking, well, I just want to say about your whole talk is that as a student of Buddhism, I hear all the time about no separation and present moment, but it's sort of like from my ego to this. You know what I mean? It's I'm here and then like be this way, which is another dualism and separation. So I'm studying Shantideva, which is very helpful and for that journey about dismantling the self. So I appreciate your presentation of this because it's all the parts are familiar to get, and I don't want to say progression like you from one to another, but when you said that, that's why this is so available to us when we don't have a distance with other, with inside and outside. That's very helpful to me. So I don't really have a question. I just a comment, and then applying what happened in the Twin Cities and in St. Paul too, like where I live. It really helps integrate this practice with what's been happening, and this longing for the other and for being in no separation in a way that in our culture we're not used to doing. So, yeah, thank you.
I think the idea of these people over and over again saying, I had to come out. It's like, oh, that's an identification with the neighborhood. That's an identification with their neighbors. That's an identification with the city. They may have a certain view of the city, that this is the city that I want, but it's the same time, it's something is calling something, and it's not far away. You know, when Boba Rouser taught me to tell people to go to hell, my other good friend Jimmy Todd had told me that his dad had told him that hell was below their driveway. So I thought, oh, it's not far away. So all of this is not far away. Well, you got to just figure out what gets in the way. The other thing I want to bring up is now that you've learned these 4 realizations, when you go to sit zazen, don't do any of that. This is the problem with this kind of thing. So here's one of my favorite quotes. Unlike worldly accomplishments, genuine transformative practice and experience rarely come from reason or knowledge. This is a body practice. We're a human body. We're human nature inside human bodies. We learn these things cell by cell. And then when you learn things cell by cell, you can I see this idea of the Henry Shukman, the separate self, he suggests, is a kind of intruder, a puppet that arose and claimed authority it didn't really have. I just came back to open arms and people want to know, oh, what was the silent retreat like? Like, this is one of the hardest questions in the world. And it's like, I never know what to say, but it's like relying on the fact that it's a body practice. It's like people obsess with the idea that no talking. How's that work? It's like we pantomime. I don't know, but it's a body practice. It's a human body practice.
So just when I would tell people at work that I was going to a Zen retreat, I think in later years I said a silent meditation retreat, but I would say Zen retreat. I don't know why, but 4 or 5 times I got asked when I got back if I played volleyball. I don't know why that came up to people, and I was like, no, it really wasn't that. But anyway, just thought I'd share that because it makes me chuckle. Volleyball.
Yeah, I told people I do a lot of dishes. They can relate to that.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions or comments before we go to events coming up and chant? I'll give it just a couple minutes here.
Yeah, Jen, I was going to ask, thanks so much for that talk, very informative. But I did want to ask, as far as the access to that podcast, is that the would be under Henry Schuckman? What was the title of the podcast?
Um, Original Love is his book,
Oh, okay,
and if you go to Upaya and say
okay,
Henry Schuckman, it should go
okay,
to Wednesday Night Talk.
okay. Thank you.
And there's various Rebecca Solnit talks on that site as well, and she's very good. She and Roshi Joan are like best buds. It's
Thank you.
interesting to say Roshi Joan kind of loosening up and elbowing people and stuff now these days. So I am very their series Awareness in Action is really, I think, brilliant. And you can actually do that on Sundays because it doesn't start till noon our time. So you can spend the whole day. But some of these speakers are just incredibly inspiring.
All right. Going once, going twice. All right, Ryushin, thank you for your Dharma talk this morning. We are very grateful for that. Just a few things to note before we leave today. Hokyoji relies on retreats and donations in order to exist. So if you feel called to donate, we do offer online donation. You can make your donations there. So for upcoming events, we are closed down for mud season. That's going to be starting very shortly here and has somewhat already. But coming up on April 6th, we have an online study group that's going to be led by one of our associate teachers, GD. This is Uji, being on time. Dogen's concept of Uji, being time, expresses the relationship between existence and time, with each moment simultaneously contains both its particular nature and the totality of all beings, being time. This is true of any Dharma position, skilled, specific moment, thing, or event. And in studying the Uji fascicle together through our lives now, we invite it to penetrate and manifest in real time. And this is going to be a 6-week class from 7 to 8:30 on Mondays. And again, that's starting April 6th. And then we do have a couple others. Clouds-in-Water is having a short retreat that you can register for April 10th through the 12th. And then April 11th, put this on your calendars, 1 to 3 p.m., we will be having Hokyoji's annual membership and board meeting. And that will be hosted in Minneapolis at the Linden Hills Park facility, but it'll also be available on Zoom. So that's I think about a month and a week earlier than last year. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. So, and finally today, we will end with the 4 Bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thank you all and have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care.